You ever had life punch you in the gut so hard, you couldn't even breathe? That was me. Before I continue the story, kindly like this story, subscribe and tell us where you're listening from. The morning I walked into my boss's office thinking we were about to celebrate a huge win, only to walk out with my career shattered. I remember the room. The air conditioner was humming, the blinds half drawn, and the smell of stale coffee lingered. My boss, Mr. Harris, sat behind his polished mahogany desk like some king ready to hand out decrees. I thought I was there for good news. Maybe a bonus. Maybe a promotion. Why not? In the last 3 years, I had taken his small, struggling company and turned it into one of the fastest growing firms in the country. I was working late nights, skipping weekends, sacrificing everything for this dream. And the dream was paying off. We'd just closed the biggest deal of the year, one that practically guaranteed us dominance in the market. But Harris didn't smile. He didn't even look at me like a human being. His words were cold, sharp, delivered with the efficiency of someone taking out the trash. "You're fired." At first, I laughed. I thought it was some kind of twisted joke. But when he slid the termination papers across the table, the reality hit me like a hammer. My chest tightened. My palms went sweaty. Fired? After everything I'd done? I managed to ask, why? My voice cracked in a way I hated. He leaned back, lacing his fingers together. "You've become unnecessary. Investors trust me now. The company doesn't need you anymore." Unnecessary. That word cut deeper than the firing itself. It wasn't about performance. It was about power. I had made him rich, and in return, he kicked me out like a dog. I walked out of that office in a daze. My colleagues looked at me with confusion, some even with pity, but none dared to speak. I packed my things in silence, every stroke of the cardboard box filling me with humiliation. When I stepped outside, the sunlight felt cruel, mocking me while the world moved on as if my life hadn't just been ripped apart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, my mind replaying every sacrifice I'd made. Every deal I closed. Every sleepless night. All of it meant nothing to him. Rage and grief tangled inside me like barbed wire. But then another thought crept in: if he thinks I'm unnecessary, maybe the investors should know the truth. I wasn't reckless. I didn't rant or scream. I drafted a message. Precise. Honest. No exaggerations. I laid out what really happened inside that company, the late-night risks I took, the deals I secured, the strategies I created. I explained how I was pushed out without warning, without cause, by a man who cared more about ego than vision. And then I hit send. I expected silence. Maybe some sympathy. At best, a few kind words from investors who might feel sorry for me. What I didn't expect was the earthquake it triggered. The next morning, I woke up to frantic banging on my door. I opened it to see Harris, Mr. King of the World Harris, sweating, his face pale, his suit jacket wrinkled like he had been up all night. He didn't look like a boss anymore. He looked like a beggar. "Please," he stammered, "you have to fix this." I blinked, still half asleep. "Fix what?" He ran his hands through his thinning hair, pacing like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. "The investors, your email, everyone's pulling out. We've lost $3 billion in market value overnight. They don't trust me anymore. They think I betrayed you, that I betrayed them." His voice cracked. I can't survive this." For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered that sterile office, his smug expression, the word unnecessary ringing in my ears. Now, he needed me. Now, he was the one begging. I didn't say much. Just stood there, arms crossed, watching the mighty crumble. By the end of that week, the company I had built was reduced to ashes. Investors withdrew one by one, like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Employees left. The empire he claimed as his own collapsed in days. And me? I didn't stop there. The investors weren't done with me. They reached out, one after another, asking what my next move was. They didn't want Harris anymore, they wanted me. That's how my new company was born. Not from ambition. Not from greed. But from betrayal. From the kind of fire that only comes when someone tries to destroy you. And here's the part that still gives me chills: the fall of my old boss wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. Because once you've tasted that kind of power, the power to rebuild, to rise from the ashes stronger than ever, you start to realize, revenge isn't just about payback. It's about proving to the world that you were never unnecessary. You were the whole damn reason for success. And Harris? He was about to learn that the hard way. When people talk about comebacks, they make it sound glamorous. Like you walk out of the ashes wearing a crown, ready to conquer the world. But let me tell you something, rebirth is messy. It's terrifying. And if you're not careful, it can swallow you whole before you even take your first step. After Harris's empire collapsed, the calls started coming in. Investors, partners, even some of the old employees. They weren't calling Harris anymore, they were calling me. I had gone from discarded trash to the most wanted man in the industry overnight. I should have been celebrating. But all I could think about was, what if I fail? I had no office. No team. Just a storm of emotions and a phone buzzing every few minutes. But here's the thing about betrayal, it lights a fire inside you that burns away fear. I wasn't just building a company. I was building a weapon. The first investor meeting was held in the corner of a dim hotel conference room. No fancy presentations, no glossy brochures, just me, a whiteboard, and a vision. I told them straight, if you back me, we won't just compete. We'll dominate. And Harris's name? It'll be nothing but a footnote in history. There was a silence after I spoke. The kind of silence that makes you second-guess everything. Then one of the investors, a man who had once doubted me, leaned back in his chair and said, I believe him. Count me in. One by one, the others followed. And just like that, the first brick was laid. The next few weeks were chaos. I pulled together a small team, people I trusted, people who had been overlooked or underestimated in Harris's regime. We worked out of a cramped rented space, wires and papers everywhere, surviving on takeout and caffeine. Every night, I'd look around at their tired faces and feel a strange mix of guilt and pride. Guilt because I knew they were betting everything on me. Pride because deep down, I knew I wouldn't let them down. We moved fast. Too fast for Harris to even react. By the time he realized what was happening, we had already secured 2 major contracts and poached some of his top clients. The industry was buzzing with one question: how did Harris lose everything so quickly, and how was I rising even faster? But here's the part that gave me chills: I knew this wasn't just business anymore. Harris wasn't the kind of man to disappear quietly. Every time I saw a black sedan parked across the street, every time an unknown number flashed on my phone, I wondered if it was him. Watching. Waiting. One night, as I was locking up the office, I found a note slipped under the door. No signature. Just 6 words, written in rushed handwriting. This isn't over. Watch your back. I stared at that paper for a long time. The smart thing would have been to ignore it. Pretend it was nothing. But my gut told me otherwise. Harris was still out there, and he was desperate. Desperate men are dangerous. Still, I didn't stop. If anything, the threat fueled me. My team and I worked harder, smarter, sharper. We weren't just building a company, we were building a fortress. Every success was another dagger in Harris's pride. Every headline that praised us was another reminder to him that I was the true architect of greatness. And then it happened. 6 months after we launched, our company won the Global Innovators Award, a title Harris had spent years chasing and never came close to achieving. I remember standing on that stage, the spotlight blinding me, the applause crashing like waves, and for the first time since that brutal day in his office, I felt whole again. Vindicated. But as I held that trophy in my hand, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. Somewhere in the crowd, maybe even outside the building, I imagined Harris watching. Teeth clenched. Hands shaking. Plotting. Because men like him don't forget. They don't forgive. And if there's one thing I learned from that chapter of my life, it's this. Success makes you a target. My rebirth was complete. But my war with Harris? That was just beginning. You know that feeling when everything seems too good to be true? When life finally starts rewarding you after years of pain, but in the back of your mind, there's this whisper telling you it won't last? That was me, 6 months into running my new company. We were unstoppable. Contracts rolling in, awards stacking up, headlines praising us as the future of the industry. For the first time in my life, I felt untouchable. But success has a way of attracting shadows. And Harris, he was the darkest of them all. It started small. Almost invisible. A server outage here, a data leak there. At first, we blamed it on growing pains. After all, we were expanding fast, too fast, some would say. But then one morning, I walked into the office to find the atmosphere tense, people whispering, avoiding eye contact. "What's going on?" I asked. My operations manager slid a folder across the desk. Inside were screenshots of emails, leaked emails. Conversations between me and investors. Sensitive details. Things that should never have left our system. "Somebody's feeding information," he said, his voice low. "This isn't random. It's deliberate." I felt my stomach drop. A mole. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. But deep down, I knew exactly whose fingerprints were on this. Harris had finally made his move. From that day forward, paranoia became my shadow. I looked at every employee differently, even the ones who had been with me from the start. Who could I trust? Who was selling me out? Every handshake felt heavier, every late-night message suspicious. But Harris didn't stop there. The leaks led to rumors that we were inflating numbers, that our technology wasn't secure, that I was no better than him. Overnight, the press that once worshipped us started circling like vultures, sniffing for scandal. And then came the investors. Some called me, panicked, demanding reassurance. Others stayed silent but pulled back funding quietly, like cowards. That's when I realized, Harris wasn't trying to destroy my company outright. He was bleeding me slowly. Death by 1,000 cuts. I barely slept. I'd sit in my office long after midnight, staring at the city lights, replaying every decision in my head. The betrayal burned. Whoever the mole was, they weren't just feeding him information, they were handing him weapons to use against me. One night, I decided to test my team. I fed 3 different employees 3 different pieces of false information. Each one unique, impossible to confuse. Then I waited. 2 days later, one of those lies appeared in the press. My heart pounded as I checked the list. Only one person could have leaked it. When I called them into my office, they denied it, eyes wide, hands shaking. But the evidence was clear. They had chosen Harris over me. And here's the part that still haunts me. I didn't fire them right away. I looked at them, someone I had trusted, someone who had eaten meals with me, built this company with me, and for a split second, I wondered if I had become Harris. Cold. Ruthless. But then I remembered that note slipped under my door, "This isn't over. Watch your back." I fired them that night. And as they left, they smirked. A small, knowing smirk that made my skin crawl. Harris wasn't just sabotaging me, he was enjoying it. Watching from the shadows as my paranoia grew, as my team cracked under the pressure. But here's the thing about me, I don't break. If Harris wanted war, I would give him one. I started playing dirty. Hiring investigators, planting my own traps, feeding false trails to anyone I couldn't fully trust. I wasn't just protecting the company, I was hunting. hunting for Harris's fingerprints, for the network he was building against me. And then, one night, my investigator called. His voice was tight, urgent. "I found something," he said. "You're not going to like it." Turns out Harris wasn't working alone. He had allies, powerful ones. People who had once smiled in my face, shaken my hand, and pledged loyalty. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. And as I hung up the phone, one thought hit me so hard it almost knocked the air out of my lungs. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. And in war, survival isn't about being the smartest or the strongest. It's about being willing to go further than your enemy. I stared out the window that night, the city lights blurring through the glass. My company was still standing, but the ground beneath it was shaking. Harris had drawn first blood. Now it was my turn. The first rule of war. Never let your enemy set the terms. Harris had already drawn blood, but I wasn't about to play defense forever. If he thought he could haunt me with whispers and shadows, he was about to learn I could be louder, sharper, and far more ruthless. I started with silence. No public response, no angry statements, nothing that would confirm his attacks were working. Let him think I was wounded. Let him think I was retreating. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, I was building something lethal. The investigator I'd hired didn't just find Harris's allies, he found their weaknesses. Debt. Failed ventures. Skeletons buried so deep they thought no one would ever dig them up. I had leverage now. And in the corporate world, leverage is blood. The first strike was subtle. A competitor, one of Harris's closest allies, suddenly pulled out of a joint venture with him. The announcement hit the press like a grenade. Harris's credibility was already fragile, now it cracked even further. The second strike was sharper. I leaked documents, real ones this time, that showed Harris inflating his company's numbers to hide massive losses. I didn't even put my name on it. I just let the truth do the damage. Investors fled. Regulators circled. His empire started to smell like blood in the water. But here's the thing, when a man like Harris feels cornered, he doesn't surrender. He lashes out. One night, as I was driving home, headlights flared in my rearview mirror. Too close. Too aggressive. At first, I thought it was just a reckless driver, but then they matched every turn I made. My pulse spiked. I tested them, cutting down side streets, doubling back. They stayed on me the whole time. Finally, I pulled into a crowded gas station, heart pounding. The car stopped a few yards back, engine idling. I waited, staring through the rear window, daring the driver to step out. But they didn't. After a few long minutes, the car peeled away into the night. Was it Harris? One of his people? Or was it just paranoia feeding on my fear? I didn't know. But that night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized this had gone beyond boardrooms and contracts. Harris wasn't just trying to ruin me financially, he wanted to break me. Maybe even destroy me completely. So I doubled down. I started attending meetings in secret, no schedules published, no leaks to the press. I built encrypted systems for communication, cut off anyone I even suspected of wavering loyalty. My team called me paranoid. Maybe I was. But paranoia was survival now. The strangest part. I could feel myself changing. The man Harris had fired, the loyal worker who gave everything for someone else's dream, that man was gone. In his place was someone sharper, colder. Someone who didn't just want to survive. I wanted to see Harris burn. And then came the opportunity. One of my sources tipped me off, Harris was preparing a massive deal. His last shot at saving his crumbling empire. If it went through, he might claw his way back into relevance. If it failed, it would bury him forever. I knew what I had to do. For weeks, I played the long game. Shadow negotiations. Quiet conversations with his potential partners. I didn't bribe, I didn't threaten. I just told the truth. Showed them who Harris really was. Gave them the proof they needed to walk away. The deal collapsed 2 days before signing. When the news broke, Harris's face was plastered across every screen, every headline screaming disgrace, fraud, collapse. His empire wasn't just bleeding now, it was gasping for air. But here's the part that should have satisfied me, the part where I should have poured myself a drink and celebrated. I didn't feel victory. I felt anticipation. Because I knew Harris. He wouldn't go quietly. No matter how broken, no matter how cornered, he would keep coming. And the closer he came to the edge, the more dangerous he would be. That night, as I sat in my office, the city buzzing below, I caught myself whispering a truth I hadn't admitted to anyone else. This isn't about business anymore. It's about survival. And in survival, mercy doesn't exist. There's a moment in every war when the battlefield shifts. At first, it's about territory, strategy, calculated moves. But then, one side gets desperate. And desperation is dangerous. It tears down the rules, the boundaries, the lines you thought your enemy would never cross. That moment came for me the night my office window shattered. It was late. Everyone had gone home except for me. I was reviewing contracts under the dim glow of my desk lamp when the glass exploded inward. A rock crashed onto my table, scattering shards across my paperwork. My heart lurched into my throat. Attached to the rock was a note. 5 words, scrawled in thick black ink. You took everything. Now pay. I stared at that note for a long time. My hands trembled, but not from fear. From rage. Harris had finally stepped out of the shadows. This wasn't whispers or rumors anymore. This was war on my doorstep. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with my team. They filed in, nervous, whispering among themselves. I slammed the note onto the table. This, I said, is what we're up against. Silence. Uneasy glances. One of my managers cleared his throat. Maybe we should de-escalate. Let the dust settle. De-escalate? The word made me laugh, sharp and bitter. Harris wasn't going to stop. He didn't want peace, he wanted me destroyed. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something terrifying. I didn't want peace either. But not everyone in that room shared my hunger. I could see it in their eyes, the doubt, the fear. And for the first time, I wondered if my own people trusted me anymore. Later that week, it got worse. One of my key clients called me in a panic. Their servers had been hacked, sensitive data stolen, and all signs pointed back to us. Harris had planted evidence, twisted the knife so it looked like I was sabotaging my own clients. The fallout was brutal. Headlines called us reckless, untrustworthy. Contracts froze. Our reputation, my reputation, was on the line. I barely slept. My days blurred into nights. Coffee, meetings, damage control, endless phone calls. And beneath it all, the steady thrum of anger, eating at me from the inside. Then came the breaking point. I was leaving the office one evening when I noticed a man leaning against a lamppost across the street. Hood pulled low, cigarette glowing in the dark. At first, I thought he was just another passerby. But then he called out, low and mocking. Nice company you've got. Shame if something happened to it. I froze. The cigarette tip flared, then vanished as he melted into the shadows. That was the moment I knew Harris had crossed a line. He wasn't just targeting my business anymore, he was targeting me. I went home that night and poured myself a drink. Sat in the dark, staring at my reflection in the window. My face looked older, harder. There was no trace of the man who once believed hard work and loyalty were enough. That man was dead. What sat in his place was someone else. Someone colder. Someone willing to go further than Harris could even imagine. I whispered into the glass, as if Harris were sitting across from me. You want personal? Fine. Let's make it personal. The next morning, I gave my team an ultimatum. If you're with me, stay. If you're scared, leave now. I won't blame you. A few walked out. Their footsteps echoed like gunshots in the conference room. But the ones who stayed, those were my soldiers. Loyal. Unbreakable. I had decided. No more defense. No more waiting for Harris to strike. From this point forward, I wasn't just going to defend my empire. I was going to dismantle his life, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. And deep down, a thought chilled me. I wasn't fighting for justice anymore. I wasn't even fighting for survival. I was fighting because I wanted to see Harris suffer. And that desire, it scared me more than Harris ever could. And that's where I'll leave it for now. But trust me, the war between Harris and me is far from over. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for the next chapter, and share this video with someone who loves a good revenge story. Until next time, stay sharp and remember, sometimes survival means going darker than your enemy.